Welcome to Mirrors into Windows, a podcast by Global Teaching Partners, an official Bridge USA designated organization. I'm Amy Corwin.
And I'm Dante Johnson. Together we dive into education from every angle, transforming reflections into opportunities and uncovering strategies that will help us look beyond the classroom walls.
Our goal is to connect educators from around the world, bringing you conversations, insights, and stories that will shift perspectives and ignite meaningful change. Because when mirrors become windows, the possibilities are endless.
Whether you're navigating life as an international teacher or searching for new ways to enhance your practice, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration, collaboration, and a richer understanding of the global classroom. Hey, welcome back everybody to another episode of Mirrors into Windows.
We are getting a few episodes racked up now, aren't we?
We appreciate you all tuning in.
Yep.
Today we want to talk about a topic. The topic title actually is Building Resilience. I feel like I have to say it that way, right?
Why? Because that just like
yeah,
it up.
You create a cartoon character in your mind, right? Or whatever.
You're like strong
with the muscles and.
Yep.
But building resilience, I think. We could talk about this many weeks over and over. This is just something that everyone is dealing with, or at some point in your life, you come to a place where you have to build your resilience. You have to realize the resilience is needed. I want to take a moment and say, well, first of all, helping to build resilience, one way to help you do that is reflection. Mm-hmm. And I want to take a moment to say, the other day I was looking on my phone, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And you know how like on social media, it has different things where it brings back memories. I saw a picture that an administrator took of me when I was Zooming 5 years ago with my students. COVID had just hit. Mm-hmm. I was in the bathtub teaching math, right?
You're in the bathtub.
Yeah. So like the walls, you can write on it with the marker and you can erase it.
It's a whiteboard.
It's a whiteboard. So
that's really smart. I never thought of that.
So I was sitting there and I was just reflecting on like, wow. Those type of things right there helps you to see the resilience that we really do have.
Look how far you've come from there.
Exactly, right?
Life has changed a lot since then.
But I mean, all of us can. I mean, you can look back 5 years ago and realize how much, we all have overcome through the pandemic or whatnot. And, I know people probably have gotten sick and people probably have lost loved ones, but even through that, we were able to bounce back, right? Which is that resilience. And let me just say this, this really was coming to me this morning as I was thinking about the topic. Resilience lives on the other side of a struggle.
Yeah.
So when people come to a struggle or a challenge, sometimes they may feel deflated because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. But you won't have resilience until you have gone through that struggle and that challenge. So that's something just to keep in mind when we think about resilience. And so when we think about some of the things that challenge and test our resilience in the classroom, classroom management, right, Amy?
It's probably the number one.
I mean, for real, like all the things that you have to deal with in the classroom, student emotions, contacting parents. We've had episodes about all these type of things. Those are things that could very well test your resilience. Mm-hmm. And it's important to understand those things are in place. Work-life balance, balancing what you're doing at home.
We talked about that. Taking time for yourself, self-caring rather than just work.
Exactly. So like all of those things in the classroom as a teacher, they would test your resilience, right? Mm-hmm. But let's even zoom in a little bit more for a J1 teacher. Right, when we're thinking about an international teacher, you have uprooted from home. Amy, you can attest to this. Uprooted from home, gone someplace foreign, somewhere different, and you are now teaching, and you kind of have to go along with the traditions and the customs and the motions of the everyday. That's like an extra layer of challenges that you might have to encounter. So I know even from hearing stories of your life and some of you all that are listening, the resilience has been present. You have overcome challenges which able to show resilience, language and communication barriers. All of those things are things that people encounter and really test their resilience. One last thing that comes to mind, and like I said, we could talk about this all day, right? Weeks after week, but I think about the rubber band. When you have a rubber band, you might have a rubber band sitting on your desk. The rubber band is there and available, right? But it's not until the rubber band is stretched when it's actually being used, right? And so when we think about our lives and we think about things that we encounter, yes, we are stretched in some form of fashion in different places of our lives. However, maybe thinking about, and we'll kind of talk about this later on, thinking in your mind like, well, maybe I'm being used, or maybe I'm going through this for a reason, so that I can learn and overcome things to be more helpful or useful in the different capacity on the other end. So, all of these things really do feed into what we think about resilience, right? And just thinking about the what it is, right? So it's when we're overcoming challenges, but then the why. Why is thinking about resilience important? For an individual, it helps with your mental well-being. And it also helps you impacting your classroom. Like, think about how it impacts your classroom with your students, right? And so there are many things that people have lived through and have experienced that will show resilience. It show the life of resilience in their life, right? So I know, Amy, you have seen teachers in our program that have gone through things that can attest to resilience, right?
I mean, we've just been talking about that a lot. You just said you've got to use the elastic band for it to be kind of building that skill. But during that process, it's so uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
That's the breaking point. Shucks, we've just been talking this week. We've had a busy week ourselves, and we feel stretched.
Yeah.
I'm a mom. I've got 2 small children at home. We've had a lot of very difficult situations with teachers just popping up all over the place. And so you're giving in all those areas. And there is times that just feels so uncomfortable. We joke, I quit. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not here to do that. But 9 times out of 10, when you get to the other side and things start to level out, you look back and you think about all the things you learned in that experience.
Yeah.
And then that really stands to you the next time.
Exactly.
And you said I've had a lot of conversations with teachers. I really have, and I admire so many of them in the things that they face. And so I guess I just wanted to chat a little bit about one of our teachers who has completed the program now. She is gone. But she just came to my mind as someone who I didn't think she was going to last but 6 weeks at the beginning. Her name is Rio. She's from the Philippines. Shout out to Rio if you're listening. But she came to the U.S. with very little experience. A young woman, single, by herself. And honestly, it was such a steep learning curve for her. There was a lot of negativity, I think, in those first 3 or 4 months. What I mean by that is pressure. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. You're not doing this. Her principal was on her. There was a massive adjustment for her to try to learn kind of all those U.S. education terminologies. I know she felt so beat down by all of it. And, at one point there was a very difficult conversation with her principal who was saying, I'm not keeping her. She's not. And, that's the hardest part when you dream of something so large and so big and you motivate yourself to kind of move and then boom, you hit this wall where it's not working out. It's not looking good. And you think that you're going to lose that opportunity, that feeling of loss. Well, then what comes next, right? There's a lot of unknowns. Like there's where do I go next? Who's going to hire me next? Where will I work next? I don't know anyone here. Am I a failure for having to go home after 6 weeks of being on a program? And so she struggled with that classroom management piece. The kids were just running circles around her, and she couldn't balance the idea of rewarding them but also delivering good consequences. And so, oh boy, what a room I saw out of control, and I thought this girl is never going to make it. But what I really liked about Rio was she was receptive. She was open-minded, and she wasn't going to be so negative that she was going to just quit.
Right.
We gave her a mentor. We gave her an educator success coach. She helped her very much professionally, but also personally, became a safe space. She's actually Miss Star Simpson, who we had on the podcast a few weeks ago. So if you didn't listen to those episodes, you should, because she had a lot to share, and I know she empowered Rio to really keep moving forward. Star helped Rio get connected with the Filipino community in her district.
That's good.
And she got herself planted in a church community there. So that gave her some more personal support. But Rio was open to kind of weekly meetings where there was practical advice and emotional support given. But then, administrators were able to help with curriculum support. And the district provided support as well. But you know what that resulted in? So much time. When you mentioned your work-life balance, I know for a fact Rio had none of that. And so for her first year, I really just felt sorry for her because I felt like she was working twice as hard as anybody else in her building, and she wasn't seeing some of those results that she was maybe wanting to instantly look at. And there were a lot of tears and a lot of late nights and phone calls and, a lot of talking her off the ledge. Like, you don't have to quit. You got this. Come on,
Motivation.
But what's happening in that process, right? The resilience piece is building. The elastic band is stretched at that point, right? You can sort of see the shaking of the sides. And, by second year, I started to see a more organized classroom. Some lesson materials, more classroom rules, more routines, procedures in place. So we're starting to sort of balance the rewards, the consequences, and she was starting to utilize some new tools that she'd never used in her classroom, like Kahoot, and she was tracking assessments, and more and more and more, I just even saw an invisible veil lift off her face where she was happier, calmer. She'd lost a lot of weight because of all the stress of this, and she was starting to regulate back to the Rio I met right at the very start when she stepped off the plane fresh and shiny. And so what a drastic improvement kind of in her teaching performance. And so I did reach out to her to ask her some of her thoughts on this because she'd sprung to mind regarding the building resilience. And, she doesn't regret one bit of that. She tells me that she absolutely knows that that's what shaped her into the person she is today. And now in her new role, which actually is back in the Philippines, she is teaching A-level chemistry at an international British school. She's a mentor and a leader and a coach for new teachers.
I love it.
And she's able to share those experiences. And she credits all of these challenges for just making her a more strong, a more resilient educator. And so I bet it didn't feel good.
No.
I bet it was uncomfortable.
Right.
I was cringing some every time that I saw her because I thought any day now she's going to call me and tell me she's booking a plane ticket home. But what an admirable trait where she just didn't quit.
Yeah.
And I see her now much stronger, much better, and leading the way in her
Rio
field.
for resilience, right?
Yes.
So in this section, we're just going to kind of go over some practical strategies and steps to build your resilience. In previous episode, we had episode about burnout. So
Are these the steps to take to not get to burnout?
Not to get to prevent burnout, absolutely. So like it's these are great because of course, as we talked about building resilience, you go through challenges. Sometimes going through multiple challenges can lead to that more of that burnout feeling or mindset. So these are things that's going to help you along the way. So hopefully you won't get to burnout. Even if you do get to burnout, some of these strategies can be used when you're in that space too. So the first one I want to talk about is growth mindset, which is a big one. I feel that as I talk to educators within global, outside of global, the mindset of the individual is one thing that we kind of talk about how maybe we can shift to help a situation. One thing in particular that I talked to a group of teachers about the other day was about growth mindset, shifting your mindset. Also, there's a word that they use. They're called energy vampires. And what it is, so the preference is from the book, The Energy Bus, which is a great book I recommend. They talk about things or people that really drain your energy. And so what happens is sometimes we look to those things and say, okay, that's a situation, or that's something that just really drains the energy out of me, and I'm just hopeless. I have no hope. But we talked about how you can actually change your mindset so that you can begin to see, okay, yes, that might be something to drain my energy, but how can I take control of the space that I'm in right now so that I can produce the energy, the positive energy that needs to flow. And so it really is something that you have to stop and think about, and kind of think about, how can I think differently? What could I do in my life to kind of help the negative self-talk that sometimes we give each other when we do embrace those energy vampires? So with the teachers, we began talking about a lot of things. And one thing I love that you mentioned in your story with Rio is that it was the growth over time that for her. And they talked about how sometimes when international teachers enter a new school or they move, and they're so focused on hitting the mark right at the beginning, but it's not about it's about the growth over time. So just give you time, patience, just think about what you're thinking about. So think about what you're thinking about, which is a good thing. And it kind of helps you to kind of strengthen your mindset and actually shift your perspective on things. So
I saw an example of that just yesterday in action. I was in a school, and the principal was saying about one of our teachers that she's at the beginning of the year moved her to third grade. She'd previously been in kindergarten. They moved her to third grade at the beginning of the year. That had a real rocky start. Third grade's not her love language. And so, but they worked with it, and she was doing her best and was trying to give it her all, but it came with a lot of challenges. Long story short, turns out they needed to add an extra kindergarten class anyway when the allotments all kind of shook out. So they made the choice to move her back to kindergarten. However, they run out of space in the building. So the only available space was a trailer way at the very, very back of the school. Quite a walk from the center of the office and things like that. But the principal said in the meeting with her, she said, she never complains about anything. Even though it was tough, it was hard, it was, challenging, she just gets on with it. And I really admire her for that, because it hasn't been easy with all of that shifting and kind of adjustment. So fast forward, I then go all the way out to the trailer to see her. And, your first question is, how are you doing? And she said, I'm okay. And I said, well, your principal says great things about you. And she says, there is no point in complaining about things that are beyond your control.
Exactly.
It is not healthy to be negative in that way, because that'll just bring you down. This is the situation I have been given at this moment, and I'm going to make the best of it.
That's it.
And I had nothing else to say to her, because her room looked great for what it was worth. She had very engaged kiddos who were still learning and doing what they could do. And I saw growth mindset right there, right? Because for many teachers, it would be like, what am I all doing all stuck out here and nowhere? And it's old, and it's not as clean as everywhere else. And she had me in one grade, and now she has me in another grade, and I had to change my way. And so that just kind of brings everyone down in a room. Right. And just leaves a very kind of negative overtone.
You become an energy vampire, right?
No, and there's no way to move forward from that. I don't know if you're sitting thinking about what I'm thinking about now. Many times you've been in meetings where you're like, stop being the energy vampire. And that leads me on to another really great strategy, in that from that growth mindset, I think we all should do a better job of developing those problem-solving skills. I've been thinking about this a lot recently for myself, because when you're thrown a lot of different challenges that you haven't thought about before, it's you can very easily be like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to fix this. That's not my, or coming to it with an attitude of, okay, these are some obstacles. I'm going to be confident about that rather than frustrated, and try to see, because challenges are inevitable and things are going to happen, unexpected behaviors, curriculum changes, administration. But if you can really identify the root cause of that problem, instead of just kind of letting your emotions all hang out, and then brainstorm some multiple solutions to alternative pathways. I once saw this like graphic organizer, and I think it's really powerful because it's just simple. And, you know, we are trained in our brains to get stuck in like a negative trapped thought pathway. Mm-hmm. And if you just write that negative thought in the middle and then spend 5 minutes brainstorming as many other alternative thoughts that you can possibly think to that counteract that.
Yeah.
And then look back and be like, okay, so I've got 9 suggestions versus the one negative trap thought.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
right?
good.
What's healthier? What's brighter?
Yeah.
And then you can practice that sort of changed or alternative thought. You can look at what worked, what didn't work. You know, if you've got an unengaged student, that's an example. Mm-hmm. This kid just won't learn. Okay, let's turn that thought around. They like computers. Mm-hmm. Okay, can I tap into that? Can I utilize that? They are outdoor kids. Can we tap into that? How can we reach them? And all of a sudden you're brainstorming rather than just coming up with that solution. They just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which again goes nowhere, doesn't grow anywhere, doesn't move anywhere, doesn't fix anything. Right. It just kind of stays stuck right there in the moment.
I love that. And so I love the graphic organizer thing, by the way.
we talk about that a lot. We like our graphic organizer.
Yeah, like I think I'm going to have to use that. But I want to use it in a way to where in the book, The Energy Buzz, they talk about using different devices to kind of help you picture the visual aspect. And I love that for that. And I almost kind of see, I'm visualizing like taking that and sharing that with other people. And so it goes to think about how it's important to connect with others who are like-minded, right? Mm-hmm. So making sure that you find your community, that you feel safe with, that you can talk about things with, you can share some of the mindset that you might be in, and then they can actually pour into you and vice versa. So I feel like another practical strategy is to find your community, find your village, find your group of people that you really connect with. And
trust.
And so it's like you can have people who you work with, other teachers, or it can be people outside of your school. So like you just finding that safe space for you to connect with others so that you all can pour into each other is super important. And you can share some of those things that you talked about with the graphic organizer with that person, right? And I feel like that is a good way for you to really, and it doesn't have to be someone from your home country. It could be someone who is different from you. But if you all click and you connect, that is super important.
I saw the opposite of that recently, and I'm really having a hard time getting through to her. I asked her, like, who you connected with, I just don't talk to anybody. See? I don't tell nobody about it. I just stay here by my classroom, and I don't want to know anybody like that.
Yeah, that's not,
I think she got married recently. It took the principal 7 months to find out that she'd got married. She won't even wear her ring. She was like, I just don't want anybody to know. And I'm having a hard time getting into her because I'm like, I understand privacy. I understand you want people to kind of separate professional and personal. I know that too, but you gotta let somebody in. You gotta let somebody in because, first of all, people don't mind. Right. You're not a burden on anybody to kind of share. People want to connect. That's how we're designed and wired to be. But it's really not healthy to keep that cognitive load. And that's when your elastic band is just getting to the point where it's going to snap. And break. Exactly. And then you're at the burnout point that we talked about before. And that's harder to pick yourself up from.
Yeah.
On that, I do feel as a J1 teacher, it was super important for me to stay connected to home. I actually, for a long time, found that difficult because you're in that weird position of, I chose to do this and I left and I'm making my new way. So every time you go back and you reconnect with home, you're reminded of what you've kind of left behind or like that FOMO situation where they're doing things and you're like, oh, did I make the right choice? Yeah. But after time, I found the balance, right? Like kind of developed a routine of when I would call family and things. And I, for a while, talked to my parents about what we should and shouldn't talk about, as in like, I want you to hear what's happening with me. And I do want to know what's happening with you, but please don't like, oh, you missed this great thing that you were like, don't talk to me with the lens of like one is better than the other, because that kind of will heighten that.
Good for you for speaking up about that.
Well, because it was just kind of tricky to kind of find your place, right? In the new, because you are very alone over here. And so you're building a community, but these people are still fresh and new.
Yeah.
This is the comfortable part. Right?
Yeah.
So when they say they were at Aunt Sally's birthday party and you're thinking, I wish I'd been gone to the party rather than I'm sitting over here by myself, that's a little harder to build that skill of resilience. But once I got that ironed out, I think it was really important to kind of have that regular connection, bring those little things from home into your house, join any sort of, like I told you with Rio's story, join those other, communities of like-minded people with you, and you'll really start to feel stronger to face those more difficult things that are happening within and out of your job. So in summary, Dante, resilience isn't really about avoiding the struggles. I guess we have to come to the realization that we are all going to struggle, and especially in education, there is days that are just really hard. And you do leave them feeling a bit defeated. But with a skill like resilience, it's just kind of learning how to move forward through those struggles, knowing that they're not likely to last forever. And that the more you build that skill through small and kind of consistent actions, you'll build longer term resilience that you're able to kind of stand up to those harder things, right? Everyone's journey is going to have some challenges, but I think we've made it very clear that people are not alone, right? I think we often feel we have to just stay isolated and alone, but find your community, ask for help, and take good care of yourself. That's really important. So just have a think through what we've talked about today. What's your strategy that you're going to try? Put it into practice and see if you can gain some of those small wins along the way. I'm back out in the classroom today. I'm with another one of our global champions. I'm really, really loving this part of the podcast where I get to kind of travel out, find out what's going on in real time. And so why don't you introduce yourself today to the listeners, and then we'll kind of dive in.
Hello, everyone. I am Angela Thompson from the beautiful island of Jamaica. I have to say that. Sorry.
It is beautiful. You guys beautiful. Say that, but it is beautiful.
It is indeed. I'm currently in my third year, thanks to Global Teaching Partners. I really appreciate that. I am a third grade teacher, and I currently teach reading, science, math, and social studies. I always have a passion for teaching. My teaching started out from when I was in third grade. Couldn't wait to go home to teach my steps. So guys, my steps were my babies. ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, that was my thing. Now, the passion for teaching is such a powerful and transformative force. It's not just about delivering the information. It's about inspiring. It's about engaging. It's about nurturing the curiosity of our students. Now, when a teacher is passionate, it creates an environment where learning feels exciting and meaningful. You can see the difference it makes in students, how they become more curious, confident, and motivated. And this is why I love teaching.
Now, if that doesn't make you want to go and sign up to be a teacher, I do not know what will. And so we're so glad and happy to have you on our podcast this afternoon. We've been diving into a topic today that's very important for teachers as they navigate the many challenges that seem to be thrown on them these days through teaching, and that is the skill of kind of building resilience with an ever increasing workload. Burnout is getting more and more common in teachers, and so it's difficult for them to kind of run the course sometimes because it just seems like things are mounting up. And so I wanted to take some time with you to just chat about
how do you do it? Like, how do you make sure that you stay strong? What are some of those skills you've been developing in building resilience? Do you have any stories you can share with our listeners today that will really help them in this area?
The first one I look at is failure. Fostering resilience through failure. In my vocabulary, fail is not an option. It is not an option. I have been having struggling days, struggling months, struggling years, whether through work, through school. And there were times when I feel like just giving up. But then something will say to me, you can't just give up. You can't be this far and then decide to throw everything away. Wow. That just does not work. So I can share a story when I was completing my master's degree. I had about 1.5 months to go. And I almost called my director to say, listen, I cannot do this anymore.
It was all mounting up.
I just can't.
Wow.
It's just too much. I have workload, I have home load, I have school work. I just have a lot. But then I couldn't give up. I think I was worried about the wrong things. Mm-hmm. And then I decided that, listen, you must continue. Yeah. When you pick up the fact that you cannot finish 16 months, you got 2 to go.
You've done more than you have got to go.
Yes, how could you
So you're changing your mindset.
The mindset. Mm-hmm. The mind is a very powerful tool. You cannot allow your mind to tell you what to do. Yeah. It is you that needs to control your mind. Yeah. So this mindset can help us to build emotional resilience over time. Once you conquer that all, you are good to go.
Wow, what a powerful story about how you build resilience. We were chatting just before we started recording, and we talked a little bit about peer support and how in your first year here, you had to really rely on some other people to kind of help you to grow, learn, and get accustomed and build that skill to keep going forward. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you and maybe how you then transform that into your students as well?
First of all, guys, the struggle is real. It is indeed. So when you come into an environment and you are lost, it's like you are like a fish out of the sea. You're like a fish out of the sea. You don't have a clue what's going on. Mm-hmm. As Jamaicans will say in John's shop, all right? So when I listen to my coach, who is very good, with that coach, you can't miss nothing. Mm-hmm. It means you must get it. Yeah. She settles for nothing less like myself. So once she will come in and she will model for you, she will show you what to do and then watch you practice.
She sounds like a really good safe space.
Indeed, yeah. She is. She's no longer with us, but I'm grateful for that lady. Mm-hmm. She would be like, Thompson, you can do this. Thompson, I know what you can do. Mm. So going into those sessions, like I did mention earlier on, not knowing what to do. And then by the end of the year, I was able to pick up myself. In Jamaica, we say pull up our socks and make sure that we get it going. Yep. So I would make sure that I grab everything that was given unto us in those meetings. I will put these things together. And by the end of the school year, I was able to make presentations. I was able to share among other teachers who were not even understanding what they were supposed to do. So you see the fact that, you bounce, it's like you bounce right back.
It really empowers someone and builds that skill.
Exactly. So empowering is very much in support of whether students or teachers create roles for our students or teachers, make structures that allow them to practice resilience in a safe place, be it in a supportive environment, encouraging peers, being accountable It fosters a sense of community that helps us as teachers, educators, even our students, that they are not alone. So the coaches are here to let us know that, guess what? You are not in this alone. We can't just leave you alone. That's why we are here. And we will be able to face our challenges together.
Wonderful. Look, I could talk to you all day about this, but I do hope that if you're listening and you are struggling with some of these things, that you will not give up. You will recognize that challenges will come. And if you just think about shifting your mindset, you'll be able to make small steps forward, and you'll reflect and look back and probably see just how far you have come. So thank you, Angela. Thank you for being with us today. Any final words of wisdom before we sign off?
Sure. Just some words of encouragement to our teachers. Resilience isn't something that we can build overnight, but with patience and consistency, we can help ourselves or students become more adaptable and confident in facing these setbacks. So guess what? Create your environments where effort is valued over instant success, where failure is reframed as a learning opportunity, and where students can lean on each other for support. Once more, resilience is as much about mindset as it is about skill building. So as teachers, we have the opportunity to model and encourage traits that help our students navigate both academic and personal challenges. I hope you have garnered something from this today, and I hope that this will help you to move forward, not thinking about failure. And when failure comes, tell failure today is not the day. We're moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Mirrors into Windows. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. It helps us reach more educators just like you.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or any other social media, or visit our website at globalteachingpartners.com. Until next time, I'm Dante Johnson.
And I'm Amy Corwin.